Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Michael Adenovich, the Solutions Architect Manager for Cireson and your host for today's session. With me today is Seth Cousins.
How's it going, everybody?
Well, thank you, Seth, and really excited to present the Cireson CMDB Portal today and how that can further mature your IT service delivery. Today's agenda, a little bit about Cireson for those of you that are new to Cireson, an intro and overview of the newly released Cireson CMDB Portal, and then I'll jump into some demos of the new CMDB Portal. And we did carve out some time at the end of today's session for Q&A. Couple of housekeeping items. This is a non-interactive webinar. Should you have any questions, feel free to post those in the GoToWebinar question panel. I'm pretty confident Seth is going to be answering those questions throughout today's webinar. And again, like I say, we did carve out some Q&A time as well at the end. So both Seth and I will tag team any questions at the end of the webinar as well. If we're unable to answer any of those questions, Seth or I will follow up via email. We do have your email from the webinar registration. I am recording today's webinar, and our marketing department will post that in the next couple of days out on YouTube, possibly Vimeo. You never know with marketing. In either case, but it will be out there for everyone to reference at a later time. So again, a little bit about Cireson. We started in 2012 providing System Center consulting services, specifically for Service Manager, Configuration Manager, and that eventually evolved into developing software. So as you know, we are a software company as well. We have well over 1,200 customers across the globe, as you can see, in 65 countries there. We still stick to our roots. As I mentioned, we started out consulting. We still provide consulting services today in System Center and the Cireson solutions, and have amassed well over 52,000 consulting hours. So truly, we are the experts. So if you need consulting services, we're the go-to company to target there. And then obviously we have a 95% renewal rate. I think that speaks volumes as to the products that we provide and the services that go behind those products. Again, like I say, we provide software to enhance Configuration Manager, Service Manager, and really gap the bridge and tie the two together, as you can see here, with a number of products. There is a suite of products for service management, as well as a full lifecycle asset management solution. And then if you look at the remote manage and the control center solutions, that really ties both Service Manager and Configuration Manager together in a single database, single web interface, pane of glass, making IT delivery much more efficient and productive. And again, we're going to continue to provide enterprise consulting services. And then down on the bottom there, you'll notice that there's free community apps. One of the things is that Cireson is a firm believer in providing back to the community. Therefore, we have a number of apps that you could download for free and leverage within your System Center environment. Some great apps. If you haven't been out there or want to know more about some of these apps, just go out, visit us at cybersyn.com. Lots of great stuff out there. So let's jump into why we're here today, which I'm pretty excited to introduce the new Cireson CMDB Portal, which was released, I want to say the end of February, early March, somewhere in that area. And the CMDB Portal is a new application within the Analyst Portal. not a replacement. And I do want to make that clear. And that CMDB portal provides SCSM configuration items management, if you would, meaning the ability to manage your service manager CIs, whether those be the out-of-the-box users, computers, business service CIs, as well as custom CIs unique to your business requirements. Interesting note is that this feature has been one of the most requested feature enhancement within the Cireson community forum. We heard you, we listened, and now it's available to current and soon-to-be Cireson customers using the Cireson Foundation and team editions of our solutions. So let's take a closer look at some of the features of the CMDB portal here. First and foremost is the caching of managed class types for Service Manager. So what does that mean? Basically, those CIs that I was talking that I mentioned in the slide previous, the out-of-the-box CIs, whether those be the user CIs, the business service CIs, as well as any custom classes or custom CIs that you may have created. So what that means is when you add those CIs to our solutions, or even the out-of-the-box CIs that are in our solution, that's actually modifying and adding the appropriate tables within the service management database, making it available within our solution. So that this way you have a lot more capability to leverage the Cireson solution with those CIs being in our database, whether it be just on a day-to-day basis or reporting basis and so forth. And I'll talk more about that a little bit later on, as well as once I'm in the demo there. And one of the nice things about adding these CI classes, again, whether out of the box or the custom CIs, Seth and his team had done a great job by providing an administrative interface to be able to add these particular CIs to the Cireson solution. So you don't have to be a programmer to code everything to add this to the solution, or a SQL guru to add those tables to the database. Excuse me. Like I say, there's a intuitive administrative interface to do that, and it's very simple to use. Again, I'm going to demo that for you a little bit later when I get to the demo section. Once you have the CIs that you need in the solution, then you could easily edit those particular CIs in the solution. So you could really do a lot of things with that from a day-to-day basis perspective. Lots of great things that you can do with those particular CIs there. And then those CIs, we do include out-of-the-box forms to present the fields and the columns on those particular custom or I should say out-of-the-box CI classes for you. So those forms are predefined. Now, when it comes to the custom CIs, one of the things that's really nice, and again, hats off to Seth and his team, what they've done is they have created dynamic forms. So if you bring in a custom CI class, what will happen is our solution will look to see what columns are in the database, or what fields that are in your particular custom class, and we'll dynamically generate a form within our solution, so that you don't even need to create a form within our solution. Really, really cool and powerful stuff. Now, if you want to take it to the next step and create your own custom forms based on your custom classes, or even the out-of-the-box classes, if you want to modify the ones that Seth and his team have pre-developed for you, we do support that. So there's, as you could see, there's a lot of value to the new features that have been added with that. So let's continue on down, because there's still a lot more features that have been added. Another feature that we've added is that you could still, you could actually add custom tasks to your forms that you're bringing in, whether it be dynamic forms or custom forms. You do have that ability. So another thing that you can do with these forms is that you could assign security based on AD group membership on those custom forms. A nice value there is, let's say that you have a particular class and it has a number of fields on it. Well, you may have maybe a help desk level 1, level 2, and level 3, and each of those different levels require different fields within that particular custom CI class. So you could have 3 forms, and now through the AD group functionality there, you could assign security to say, well, I want level 1 to have access to this particular class, but only these fields. And I want level 2 of the help desk to have access to that same CI and that same class, but I want them to have access to additional fields and so forth. So you have that granularity, if you would. If we look at the next 2 bullets here, creating tables, charts, and OData, this is now taking the CMDB database to a higher level here now, because now you have all this data in the system, you're managing this data, and now, as I mentioned before, we're adding that information in those tables to the service management database. So that now means that you could leverage Cireson Analytics, the dashboard designer, now to report on that data, whether it be through list or tables, or if you want to do it through dashboards. You now have that ability on those. Actually, you had it before, but now it's just by far much more robust there. Another thing that we've added to the solution is the ability to modify the login page. And what I mean by that is that I've come across this a number of times with our customers, where they have certain regulations or requirements where maybe they need a third-party authentication in front of their portal, again, due to whatever types of regulations or audit requirements and so forth. So now we provide you the ability to do that. So now if you need to tie in maybe some unique code within your login page, you have that ability by modifying, and I think it is the app.lib.js file. And if you place that in the custom space folder, now you could modify that, and then with each upgrade, it's not going to be overwritten there. So lots of great things. So we're going to move on. I think I just have one more slide, and then we'll jump into the demo here. So what does the CMDB portal do for me? You know, probably a good portion of you out in the audience today, as I've gone through some of these features at a very high level, I'm pretty confident your wheels are spinning on how this already can fit within your particular organization. So I've come up with a couple of examples here. And as you could tell, the CMDB portal really now allows you to tailor your solution to your business needs and so forth. I put a couple of examples here because, again, in talking with customers, these are some of the common requests. They want them as feature requests, when now you could easily do these also on your own here. One of the things that I tend to get or ask quite frequently is the ability to do like a chargeback. There are some organizations where the IT department needs to charge back to the different departments throughout their organization for IT resources. So this here is another way that you can track and log and report on departmental chargeback. It would be easier also if you're using the Cireson asset management solution to enhance that, because some of those fields are there. But additionally, another request was, hey, I want to know when my IT is out on vacation or holiday. And so forth. So again, I've heard many customers create their own little class, just to track this. It's just a better way. Again, these are just examples. I'm certain that there's better examples that you're thinking of to better fit your organization. But another one that I find is that a lot of IT departments are tracking things that they need to track so that they can have it documented, whether that be all the file shares that are out on the file servers, or what are the IP address schemas that we use. But my point here is that a lot of that information that IT departments are tracking are on spreadsheets. And there's multiple iterations and different versions of them. They're stored on people's local desktops. Who knows where they're at? Whereas now with the CMDB portal, you don't have to do that anymore. You could create your own class to track, for example, file shares or IP address schema, or whatever your IT department is tracking on spreadsheets. And I'm certain that there's tens, hundreds of different things that are tracked. That now can all be placed within the CMDB and managed through the web interface, so that now you have a single source of all this information, and it's up to date and it's current. And again, remember, you could set security on this as well. So you do have that option as well to now add security to that. Now, you could also take this a step further, because if you have this information here, maybe this is actually part of your request offering. So now you can enhance your service catalog and your request offerings, because now if you have this information in the CMDB, maybe now you can have request offerings requesting file shares and IP addresses and so forth. And again, it's all kept within the CMDB. So I think I've done enough talking, so I think I'm going to jump right into the demo here. And so if you guys give me a second, I'll bring up my screen. All right. I'm going to log into my portal. Let's hope the demo gods are with me today, people. Okay, so I'm logged into my portal in my little demo environment here. And as you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, I have my nav pane. Those that are very familiar with the existing portal, I just went into the configuration icon on the nav pane here. And this is what is this is what has been available in the previous versions of the Cireson portal. So here are our configuration items. And as you can see, we could go ahead and pull down any of the CIs that we want. But if I want to drill down into a particular CI, the information that was provided is rather difficult to comb through. Not all the information is there. It's on a generic page, and you don't have any ability to edit or modify that particular data. So again, one of the biggest request out on the community forum was to be able to provide some capabilities to edit that solution. So what we have here now is the CMDB configuration items. And by the way, I just renamed it. This is in the navigation settings, so you'll need to enable this particular CI navigation pane there. I'm not articulating that well, but you'll need to expose this page, and then you may want to hide the out of the previous one. So now, as you can see, when I click on the configuration items, here you have the slide out of all of the out of the box and most common CI tools. So for example here, if I want to click on the business services, this will bring up all of the business services. And in my demo environment, I have 2 business services created. So if I want now I could go ahead and I can drill down into that particular business service here. And if you notice, now I have a form. And again, this is the forms that Seth and his team have predefined for the solution as an out-of-the-box. So this comes with version 9.0 and higher. I think we're going to be releasing 9.1 here shortly. So in either case, as you could see, I have all the fields, I have all the tabs up at the top. And as I scroll down, I may want to say that, you know what, I may want to change a user here. Maybe I'm going to change this to Rob Young here. So I could go ahead and change this now to Rob Young. Or maybe what I want to do is change the service because this service just had an outage. So I could quickly, right through my mobile phone, or the web portal, because as you know, our solution is mobile adaptive, I can quickly just say, you know what, I am going to set this to out of service because that particular service, just business service, went down. So in changing that, what's really nice here is that now I could have a trigger to say, okay, when the status changes to out of service, go ahead and trigger a notification workflow. And that notification workflow will notify the appropriate staff and end users that this particular service is currently not available right now, and IT can immediately begin troubleshooting the issue. They don't have to, send all these notifications out. It could all be automated so that this way IT can begin working immediately on the issue. Another thing that's really nice here is if I go back to, I'm going to cancel this because I've made so many changes to my demo environment here. So if I go back and maybe I want to look at computers with active incidents here. And I want to look at the CI. And here is a particular device that I want to look up. Again, now this is going to show me the actual CI data on this particular device here. This happens to be a workstation. Anyone who's familiar with the out-of-the-box console is well aware of what this form looks like in the out-of-the-box console, and now that is available within our portal so that you can manipulate or change this data. One thing that I do want to point out, and you're probably asking yourself, or if you haven't already asked Seth, yes, one of the things that you want to be aware of is that if you do have a connector set up that's synchronizing this data, then yes, that sync is going to be the authoritative source. So if you make a change to a field within the solution that the connector is going to resync, then yes, it will be overwritten. So you just want to be cognizant. If you are modifying data that has a connector, you want to make certain that there's certain fields that may not be part of that connector. Those are the fields you want to modify there. So just be aware of that, and I just wanted to point that out real quick. Now, these are the out-of-the-box particular CI classes that I'm editing, but I do have a custom one that I call our shared mailboxes. So, and I made this publicly available. So here I have all of the company shared mailboxes because it does make it a little bit easier for the exchange team, for IT, so forth and so on. So here I could go into, for example, here the accounting department here. And this is a good example also for chargeback and so forth. So here is my particular mailbox share, and maybe I want to assign this to Don. Don is going to be the person that is ultimately responsible for this. and I need to associate a cost center to this particular mailbox share, because again, this is doing a chargeback. Now, if I wanted to, I could also put in another column here in my custom class to indicate what the cost is, whether it be on an annual cost, a monthly cost, whatever the case may be. Again, it's all driven by the business. And who is the approver of this particular share here? Or not share, but mailbox share. And maybe this is Brad, and I want to assign Brad. He's the approver of this, so that this way, if anyone's requesting access to this mailbox, we know who the approver is. So again, instead of managing all this through spreadsheets, it could all be managed through the CMDB. Now, as I mentioned before, one of the benefits to this, there's many here, but one of the benefits is that now I've got everything in that CMDB. I want to really enhance my service offering to the end user community, or maybe even to IT. I want to have request offerings solely for IT. So yes, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cancel this. And we're going to go to the home. And here, what I've got, let's go back to the home page. There we go. And now I have the end user service catalog, and what I've done is created a shared mailbox access. So what's really nice here is that I can say, okay, I want to add a user to a mailbox here. Well, what share do I want to add them to? But now remember, you're managing the shared mailboxes in the CMDB. So if anyone adds a new shared mailbox or removes a mailbox that's no longer needed, your service request is dynamically updated. So you're really simplifying the whole process of managing your data. And if it fits in the category of service delivery, you could then add it to the service catalog in your service offering. So in this example, maybe I want to add them to the sales team. I want to pick this particular user, give my business justification and my date. I don't think I need to say this because I think everyone gets the picture on how powerful it is to store all that information in the CMDB, because it really makes things a lot easier for IT as a whole now. So now, how do we do all this? Let's get into the more of the technical stuff there. So what I want to do is let's go ahead and show you how this really works. So if I go to administrative settings, I've got to move things around on my screen, don't mind me. There's a new option there called dynamic data. So if I click on the dynamic data, as you can see, what this is here is this is where our out-of-the-box CI classes have been added for you, and that's part of the install. So once you install it, a lot of the predefined CIs that have forms that are in the navigation pane, those are going to be there out of the box. But if you want to add, for example, an additional out-of-the-box class, or you have a custom class, it's very straightforward. Just go ahead and add your particular class, which will be available because we're going to look at the service manager there. So here, I want to call in something called file share. So once I find that, all I do is just select it and click update. I'm going to cancel here because I already have it added here. Once you add that, what that's going to do is it's going to then go ahead, once you save it, I should say, it's going to now add that to the Cireson solution, specifically the service management database there. And it's now going to begin caching that data with our platform cache service and cache that data into our database and the newly created table within that database. And that's going to occur every 10 minutes. This is milliseconds, and if you click on the little information here, it'll tell you that. Obviously, you can change that if you want, if you need it to sync every whatever's appropriate for your organization. By the way, if you set it rather low, what will happen is that it's not going to step on each of the syncs. So let's say that you set the sync every 5 minutes, but your sync takes 6 minutes. What will happen is that it's not going to stop the first sync. It'll wait for the first sync to complete before it starts the second sync. And by the way, it's going to do a delta. So the first sync is going to copy all the data, and then every sync thereafter is going to do a delta. Now, we have added some troubleshooting things here to make it a little bit easier for you, where you can force a cache sync. Maybe you want to purge some of the data out of that cache sync. So what it's going to do is it's going to delete all the data from that particular table, and then you could resync that again. Or if you want, you could even just do kind of an update sync. We call it a reset sync, but it's just going to change the modified timestamp within the rows for the data, so that it'll just redo an update to that particular table there. So now that I have my file share data in there, or my class in there, I know that that has already sunk to the solution. So the next step that I can do is I could just go to the navigation pane. And on the navigation pane, maybe all I want to do here is I just want to create a new, I'm going to call it file share. I want to create a new navigation pane here, or navigation icon. Of course, I could set security as to who has access to the file share icon here on the navigation pane. And in my case, I'm just going to keep it as myself here. So, but if I wanted to, I could set who has access to that. So we're going ahead and creating my file share here. It took a little bit. So if I go to my file share, I gotta, again, move things around. All right, so here is my blank file share page. Now, of course, I can change the layout if I want to add a couple of different tables and so forth. But for this demo, I'm going to keep it simple. We'll just select one table. So now I want to go to the content here. And as I mentioned, we're going to leverage the OData, and we can do OData tables, charts, counts, so forth and so on. So for simplicity, I'm just going to do a quick OData widget here. So now I want to configure this OData widget. Maybe I want to call it file share. We'll just call it file shares. I can give it a description. Now my endpoint is going to be, we're going to tie into the Cireson API. So we're just going to type in platform API. Now when we do that, the collections now are exposed because we know what APIs to connect to, and now all of that information in those tables are available here in this option here. So what I want to do is I want to select that file share class that I added, because we can see that in the collections now. If I want to, I can further define by a query string. So instead of bringing every field in from this particular class, maybe I want to filter on that. I do have that ability with a query string. I'm going to keep it simple for now. I'm not going to fill that out. The other thing is that if I do have multiple languages, they're all stored within that table that was created in the database, each of the different languages as a separate row. So if I come in as English, then I only want to see the English rows or whatever is my current language. And then very simply, I just want to say now, what fields do I want to, or what columns do I want to expose on my table here? And so let's say I have a whole bunch here, but I'm going to keep it simple. I just want display name, the status, and the creation date. Now, if I wanted to get really nice, or not really nice, but I do have the ability where we're going to go ahead and create how the data is displayed for you. And if I click on Custom Desktop Template, the settings that I have up here, or I should say, it creates the default template based on my settings up here. But now I have the ability to further modify that if I so choose. So you do have that ability to take it a step further. In my case, I'm just going to keep it rather simple here. So now, and the same holds true for the mobile template. I think that goes without saying. So if I click apply here now is my, I only have one row in my table here. So here is my display name, my asset status, and my creation date. And here is my one record. You know what? Let's do this before I do anything. I want to save this. So now if I click on marketing file share, here is, I didn't create a form. This is the dynamic form that was built based on the columns there within there. So here now, you could see I have my display name, my asset, my notes, and all additional information here. I have a couple of tabs and so forth. But you know what? This is nice. This is great. I'm not a custom form developer, so the dynamic is absolutely fantastic. But now, you know what? I do want to create a custom form. So one of the things is I do have a custom form that I do have created. Again, this is the same as anyone who's worked with the custom space before, but one of the things that we've done in the custom space directory is now another directory called config item. So that is what that is the directory that we're looking at for custom forms and so forth. So if I drop this JS file into the custom space config item folder, and if I go back here now, let's do a refresh, it should have picked up that form is now there. So now that form is there, and now I'm presenting the data the way that I want to present it to my analysts, to my end users, to management, whomever it may be. So now, again, I have all that information here. I have my notes tabs, related items, and of course, I'm going to be able to see the history in a legible format here and so forth. Very, very easy. Now that I've got my custom form, let's take this a step further, and I'm going to cancel here. Being that I have that custom form, maybe I have a multitude of custom forms. So if I want, I can now go into group settings here, and I can say I want to assign forms to an AD group. So maybe what I want to do is I want to give this form just to the analyst. So I could give it a form ID, which the form ID is in the JS code. So you would need to look at that. We can't look at that by default. So you would have to look that up and plug that in here. I'm just going to assume it's default here because I haven't checked that. And then here now, what I would do, I'm going to I don't have a type projection, so I'm going to use a different one. I'm gonna call this share. So now I'm going to create a security for my shared mailboxes. So here is the form type, and what is my type projection? I could type in mail, and here's my type projection for my shared mailbox. So now I could go ahead and update this to add it, and now I would have security as to only these users would have access to this particular form. So if I had 3 separate forms pointing to the same class or whatever the case may be, I could assign that to different individual, or I should say groups within the solution there.
Hey, Mike.
Yes,
with
sir.
the custom forms, do you want to touch on relationships and relationship properties and controls?
If you want to take over that conversation, I'm more than willing to.
Okay, so it's just the idea that in your custom form you can have additional relationships based off of that particular object. So if you have an object like a shared mailbox and you want to have an owner that's related to an Active Directory user, you can do that with your custom form. So as long as you have a type projection that supports those relationships, then you can add those in your custom form and they'll appear in the form.
Thank you, Seth. I appreciate that clarification there.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm certain that the audience appreciates that as well. So one last thing that I want to mention here real quick, our dashboards. Again, I'm going to cancel here. I don't need to modify my environment here. So if I go to dashboards, I've created a dashboard here. And again, anyone who's played with the analytics and the dashboard know that information is it's pretty straightforward to use. But my point here is that I've created a CMDB portal. So in here, I've created a dashboard so that I could see my mailbox shares, my file shares, if I want to look at the detail of my mailbox shares. And this is, again, kind of going back to what Seth had said with the relationships here, where I could see who the owners of those particular mailbox shares are, because that was done through a relationship. The same with the cost center, because I'm pulling through the asset management solution there. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel here. And let's go back to my dashboard here. So here, again, I could easily create my dashboard. And here's one of the things that's kind of nice too, is I could see, okay, here is my dashboard, and I could see what's going on with my business services. And I could see I have one of them already in maintenance. But if I wanted to, I could go ahead and, right from my dashboard, I could go ahead and change that business service because it's no longer in maintenance mode. And I'm going to change this now back to in service. So let's go ahead and click save here. And now if I go back, it didn't update. Oh, interesting. Maybe I'll try a refresh here. There we go. I just needed to do a refresh. And now I have all my services in service there. So hope the demo was beneficial to everyone. I have one more slide and then we'll jump right into Q&A here. I just want to talk about next steps. For those customers that are existing Cireson customers that have the foundation and the team edition of our solution, again, like I mentioned before, you are entitled to the Cireson CMDB Portal. Feel free to go ahead and download that. If you are considering Cireson, please do reach out to us at team.cireson.com. We're more than happy to set you up with a trial of our solution, and you can play with the CMDB portal. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump into Q&A here. How we doing on questions there, Seth?
So we had one, answered it, and that was where the form question came from, and it looks like we've got another one. It says, let's say my computer's customers are hospitals with their own metadata for each of them. Can I create a hospital class in Service Manager and then create and update the metadata on the portal using a browser? I would say that the only question there is what sort of metadata we're looking at. If we're just looking at the actual data around the hospital itself, such as users of the hospital's name, the hospital's address, the hospital's phone numbers, contact information, those sorts of things related specifically to the hospital, and then even users in your organization that relate to the hospital, the question would definitely be yes. We've actually done that within our own organization using this technology. We have a customer class, which is actually the customer's company, and then we relate all the different users that are members of that customer company to that class. We also relate the different tickets that come in from the customer across the different users, and then have all the information about the customer specifically, such as contact information. So I think when you say also relationships, I think you're meaning hospitals managed by which location in our company. Yes. So you'd be able to add, so when you create your custom class, the actual class creation occurs inside Service Manager. So you'd create the custom class. As long as that custom class has a relationship to an Active Directory user, you could call that relationship managed by, and then you could relate any Active Directory user or any user in your Service Manager database to any specific hospital class. So you could have both account manager and say managed by user. So you'd create the hospital class, you'd have two relationships on it, both of them that are targeting Active Directory users, and you would name one, say, the managed by, and one as the account manager. And then once that class is synced in, you would just make sure that you're using a type projection that includes those relationships, and then you could add those two to the form, and then from there you could actually edit them, change up who is the manager, who is the account manager, and display that information there. You can also display that information in your grid. So when you have a grid, because we're bringing in extended fields and we flatten relationships in the OData endpoints, because we flatten those, you can actually show the account manager and the hospital manager or whatever else inside your grid when you're searching through it and filtering it. Okay, I'm glad we're able to answer that question. Don't see any other questions just yet, Mike.
Yeah, I don't either. Feel free to ask questions. Seth and I will stay on for another minute or two here.
Looks like we have another one here from Carol. It says, what happens when we want to see the changes of the CIs to be synced back to our system? You said earlier that syncs will overwrite the CI changes we made in the portal. What he's referring to when he says that is he's actually referring to the changes to things that are related to other background sync processes. So an example would be an Active Directory user and you have your AD sync connector in Service Manager setup. So if you make a change to the configuration item in the portal on an AD user, and it's a field that is also updated by the sync connector, then the sync connector would be overriding that field. It actually has nothing to do with us or how we're doing this. It simply has to do with the fact that you have many other processes within the environment that may or may not be doing something. And in this particular case, it's just a warning about having those background processes and knowing which objects are being updated by those processes. So as long as you're using an object that's not touched by a connector, your changes will stay just fine in the Service Manager database. He's simply referring to the fact that if you made those changes in Service Manager, they would also be overwritten simply because that AD connector is going in on a scheduled basis and updating those fields. And then I hope that answers that question. Carol, if it doesn't, feel free to ask additional follow-up or reach out to me directly as well. The other question is, what are the updates in the 903 release, and could we go over those briefly? So we can definitely do that. We actually have on our software downloads page, when you go to download this version of the portal, we do have release notes in there. And these things are highlighted in the release notes. Mike, I don't know if you want to maybe show those to answer the question, or if you just want me to talk through them briefly.
Well, what I can do, I actually put the slide back up again on some of the new features, but I think it would be easier for everyone if I just, let me see here. Let me go back to this portal here. Let's go to software downloads.
Yeah, one thing I will clarify in the meantime is that the 9.0 release is actually the release that had all the new functionality. The 9.02 and the 9.03 releases were simply releases with bug fixes, and a lot of which had nothing to do with the 9.0 release. They were just follow-ups from previous versions where things were found and fixed. So really the most important one was the 9.0 release, which is the one with the new features.
Absolutely correct. And if you go to what Seth was saying, if you go to the software downloads, .cibersyn.com, click on Service Management, and then you'll see the Cireson Portal. If you click on Release Notes, it will list, as Seth mentioned, 901, 902, 903 had bug fixes. But if we look at 9.0, it'll then describe all of the changes and features that have been added to the 9.0 version there. So it does provide that information there. And then I think, yeah, so in either case, it does list them out here in the release notes. And if you need additional information, again, just reach out to Seth or I or team@cireson.com and we can further answer any additional questions that you have there. Or if you want to post them here in the question panel, again, you have Seth and I now. We're more than happy to address those.
Are the community enhancements compatible with the new release? Long story short, yes, but in terms of all the different ones, it's really hard to say. As far as there's not been any changes to the request offering pages yet in this particular release, so the RO toolbox should still work. So yeah, those should still work. I mean, if in certain cases we may have changed or updated pages and those sorts of things, especially with various bug fixes. Obviously, we don't support community releases, but we also don't intentionally do things to break them. We want the community releases to work as long as is feasible. But that's also why we put the stuff in the release notes, just to say what's changed, to give the idea for the community to be able to update those to work with the next version.
I'll take this next question here, which is regarding licensing, and the question is they're asking if I can confirm how this is licensed. This is actually licensed under your existing licensing. So if you own the Team Edition or the Foundation edition of our solutions, you are entitled at no additional licensing cost to leverage the CMDB Portal functionality. Again, it's a new feature added to your existing licensing. So the long and short of it is it fits within the Cireson the current licensing model. So there's basically no change in cost because we are not talking about making any licensing changes that I'm aware of. So hopefully that answers your question.
So there's a name change. Our team cannot do it in the portal as it will be overwritten by AD connector. That is accurate. So because of the way the configuration manager database works, it's a centralized storage of all your different configuration items throughout your environment. But ultimately, it's not in control of Active Directory unless you have some form of outside sync process that updates Active Directory, which is a separate system. So if you make the change within Service Manager or within the Service Management Portal, then that will make the change in Service Manager and you'll see it there. But the next time the AD connector runs, it looks at Active Directory as its source of truth, and then it updates Service Manager as the subordinate to that. So that is correct that if you were to make the change, it would be overwritten. We do have in the remote management stuff, two-way connectors. So that actually just depends. A lot of people don't necessarily want that because there's usually different groups that deal with Active Directory versus service management. And so usually Active Directory has its own separate set of administrators and things like that. And having processes write back is often limited or very closely scrutinized. We are working with our remote management technology. So our remote management application that many of you probably have in your particular license structure and can also be purchased through Cireson ties into the support portal. And with that, you can actually unlock Active Directory user accounts and make note of these things. And there are some feature requests there to actually be able to update Active Directory with certain controlled changes. And so that's a possibility in the future that you will be able to update Active Directory utilizing Cireson's remote management tools.
Are there any other questions that Seth and I can answer for anyone? We'll stay on the line for about another minute, and if there's no other questions, we'll end today's session. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Someone had said, hey, great, thank you, and great session. So again, appreciate the positive feedback.
And all the great questions.
Yes, yes.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. As Mike said, feel free to reach out to either of us, either through the Cireson community or directly via email. It's just our first.last@cireson.com. Thanks
Great.
again.
Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.